The Verlax Nebula stretched across space like a dark purple bruise. Inside its swirling clouds, sensors went blind and communication signals turned to static. It was the perfect place for an ambush, and Fleet Commander Vex Thor of the Tharn Collective knew it. 300 warships floated in the darkness, their engines cold and their weapons ready. Vex Thor stood on the bridge of his flagship, his forearms crossed in satisfaction. The humans would come through this nebula in 2 days. Intelligence reports were clear. A supply convoy, poorly defended, carrying food and medicine to the human colonies on the rim. "They are so predictable," Vex Thor said to his second officer. "Always taking the shortest route. Always believing their luck will hold." His second officer clicked his mandibles in agreement. "The humans are young, Commander. They have been in space for barely 300 years. We have ruled these stars for 10,000. Vex Thor looked at the tactical display. His ships formed a perfect kill box. When the humans entered, they would be surrounded on all sides. No escape, no mercy. The Tharn Collective would send a message to all of humanity. Stay in your corner of the galaxy or die. Far away, beyond the nebula's edge, Captain Minho Kim floated in absolute silence. His ship, the Silent Arrow, was no bigger than a shuttle. Its hull was black as space itself. Every system ran on minimal power. For 3 weeks, Minho had been watching the Tharn fleet. For 3 weeks, he had been completely invisible. Minho's crew consisted of only 5 people. They spoke in whispers. They moved like ghosts. Every 6 hours, they sent encrypted data bursts back to the human fleet. Ship positions, weapon configurations, command frequencies, everything. "Captain," whispered his communications officer, Salman Lee. "The Tharn just activated their targeting systems. They're running final checks." Minho nodded slowly. "Send it all to Admiral Jiwan. Include the power signatures." Soman's fingers moved across her console without sound. The data compressed into a tight beam and shot away into deep space. Too fast and too focused for Tharn sensors to detect. 200,000 kilometers away. Hidden behind a dead moon, Admiral Jiwan Park studied the incoming data on her flagship. The bridge crew worked quietly around her. No one spoke unless necessary. They had been in position for 19 days. "They still don't know we're here," said Commander Taeyang Choi, the intelligence officer. He stood beside the Admiral, his eyes on the same display. "Captain Minho's stealth fields are holding perfectly." Jiwan allowed herself a small smile. "Good, what about the drones?" "Ready to launch on your command. They'll follow the exact route the Tharn expect our convoy to take." Jiwan looked at the tactical map. The Tharn fleet glowed red, clustered in the nebula's heart. Around them, invisible to enemy sensors, 90 human warships waited. Destroyers, carriers, railgun platforms, all hidden behind the most advanced stealth technology humanity had ever built. "Do the Tharn suspect anything?" Jiwan asked. Taeyang shook his head. "Dr. Yuna Han's team cracked their encryption 3 months ago. We've been reading every message they send. According to their communications, they think they're going to make history tomorrow." "They are," Jiwan said quietly, "just not the way they expect." On the Tharn flagship, Vex Thor received his final reports. All ships were in position. All weapons were charged. All crews were ready. He felt the familiar thrill of victory before battle. The humans had made it so easy. "Sir," his scanner officer said, "I'm detecting minor fluctuations in the background radiation." Vex Thor waved a dismissive hand. "The nebula creates 1,000 false readings every hour. Ignore it." "Yes, sir." But the fluctuations weren't random. They were 90 human warships running on minimal power. Their experimental stealth generators bending light and energy around their hulls. Engineer Hayne Park had designed the system in secret. She had promised Admiral Jiwan it would work for 3 weeks. It had been 19 days. 5 days to spare. Aboard the Silent Arrow, Captain Minho watched the Tharn fleet through passive sensors. He saw their confidence in the way they positioned their ships. Tight formations. Overlapping fields of fire. A commander who believed he had already won. "Captain," Soman whispered, "the Admiral is sending new orders." Minho read the message on his screen. 24 hours until activation. Hold position. Maintain silence. He acknowledged the order with a single click. Lieutenant Hyunwoo Bae sat in his fighter cockpit aboard the carrier Indomitable. Around him, 300 other pilots waited. They had been briefed yesterday. They knew the plan. They knew the risks. I still can't believe we've been sitting here for almost 3 weeks, his wingman said over the private channel. Patience, Hyunwoo replied. The Admiral says humans were persistence hunters once. We tracked animals for days until they collapsed from exhaustion. We can wait a little longer. The Tharn celebrated that night. Vex Thor allowed his crew extra rations. They sang war songs and sharpened their weapons. Tomorrow they would crush the humans. Tomorrow they would prove that the old powers still ruled the galaxy. None of them saw the small black ship that drifted silently through their formation, recording everything. None of them detected the massive fleet that surrounded them. Engines cold and weapons ready. None of them read the human communications that passed through quantum channels they didn't even know existed. Vex Thor went to sleep that night, dreaming of glory. He would be remembered forever as the commander who humbled humanity. Statues would be built in his honor. Songs would carry his name across the stars. Admiral Ji-won Park did not sleep. She walked through her flagship, checking on her crew. She visited the medical bay where Dr. Jaemin Ryu prepared for potential casualties. She stopped by the Marine quarters where Commander Jiho Kang drilled his boarding teams. Are you ready? She asked Jiho. Always, the Marine commander replied. Though I hope we won't be needed. Hope for the best, Jiwon said. Plan for the worst. She returned to the bridge as the final hours counted down. Captain Sunwoo Lim, her tactical officer, approached with a cup of coffee. You should rest, Admiral, he said. After tomorrow, Jiwon replied. Have the drone convoy been launched? Yes, ma'am. They're following the expected route perfectly. To any long-range scan, they look exactly like supply ships. Jiwon nodded. The drones were sophisticated. They broadcast the right signals. They moved at the right speed. They even generated false heat signatures that matched human engines. The Tharn would see exactly what they expected to see. Helpless prey walking into their trap. In 6 hours, the jaws would close. But they would close on the wrong target. And when the Tharn realized their mistake, they would discover that the humans had been the hunters all along. 3 weeks of perfect patience. 3 weeks of absolute silence. 3 weeks of waiting for the perfect moment. That moment was almost here. Admiral Jiwon looked at the countdown timer on her screen. 6 hours, 14 minutes, 37 seconds until the drone convoy entered the kill zone. She picked up her communicator. All ships, this is Admiral Park. Battle stations in 5 hours. Maintain stealth protocols until my command. Remember, we're not here to start a war. We're here to end one before it begins. Across the hidden fleet, 90 ships acknowledged the order in silence. The trap was set. The prey had become the predator, and the Tharn collective had no idea what was coming. The drone convoy entered the Verlax Nebula exactly on schedule. 5 ships in loose formation, their engines glowing with what looked like standard human propulsion. They moved slowly, carefully like vessels carrying precious cargo through dangerous space. On the Tharn flagship, every sensor locked onto the targets. Confirmed, the scanner officer announced. 5 human supply vessels, no escort. They matched the intelligence profile perfectly. Vex Thor felt his heart racing with anticipation. Range? Entering optimal firing range in 3 minutes. All ships, Vex Thor commanded across the fleet channel. Prepare to fire on my mark. Today we teach humanity the price of expansion. 300 Tharn warships powered up their weapons. Energy built in massive cannons. Missile tubes flooded with targeting data. Thousands of crew members stood ready at their stations. The human convoy drifted deeper into the nebula, seemingly unaware of the death that surrounded them. 2 minutes. Aboard the Silent Arrow, Captain Minho watched everything unfold. His passive sensors picked up the massive energy surge as the Tharn fleet prepared to fire. They're committed, he whispered to Soman. Send the signal. 1 light year away. Admiral Jiwon received the confirmation. She took a deep breath and looked at her bridge crew. All ships, she said calmly. Execute counterstrike. 90 human warships came to life at once. 1 minute. The Tharn scanner officer frowned at his display. Sir, I'm reading impossible, multiple energy signatures. Dozens of them. They're fire, Vex Thor commanded. Fire now. The Tharn fleet unleashed hell on the convoy. Thousands of weapons discharged simultaneously. The space around the 5 supply ships turned white with energy, but the ships didn't explode. They didn't even slow down. They flickered like holograms and vanished, their purpose served. What? Vexthor stared at his screen in confusion. Where did they— Sir, his scanner officer's voice cracked with panic. We're surrounded. 90 human warships all around us. They're real! They're all real. Every screen on the Tharn flagship suddenly displayed the same image. Admiral Jiwan Park, sitting calmly in her command chair. Fleet Commander Vexthor, she said in perfect Tharn language. You have been surrounded for 19 days. Power down your weapons immediately or we will destroy your fleet. Vexthor stared at the screen in disbelief. 19 days? Impossible. His sensors would have detected them. His scouts would have seen them. This had to be a trick. It's a bluff, he shouted. They can't hide 90 ships. Maintain firing positions. Sir, the sensors confirm it, his second officer said, his voice shaking. Human vessels on all sides, destroyers, carriers, railgun platforms. They have us in a complete sphere. Admiral Jiwan's expression didn't change. I see you need a demonstration. Captain Nari, you may fire. On the carrier Indomitable, Captain Nari Song gave the order. 3 railgun platforms adjusted their aim with perfect precision. They didn't target the flagship. They targeted 3 Tharn destroyers on the outer edge of the formation. The railguns fired. Tungsten rods moving at a fraction of light speed crossed the distance in seconds. The first Tharn destroyer exploded before its shields could even activate. The second split in half, its reactor going critical. The third simply ceased to exist, vaporized by the impact. 3 ships, 3 shots, 5 seconds. The Tharn fleet descended into chaos, evasive action. Someone screamed, "We're boxed in. Return fire." At what target? They're everywhere. Vexthor grabbed his command console, his hands shaking. This couldn't be happening. He was the hunter. They were the prey. The trap was his. Admiral Jiwan's face remained on every screen. You have 1 hour to decide, Commander. Surrender or die. I prefer surrender, but I will accept either choice. Then the screens went dark. Vexthor turned to his communication officer. Get me the fleet admirals. Scramble channel. Sir, our scrambled channels? The humans are broadcasting on them too. They know all our frequencies. Deep in the human fleet, Dr. Yuna Han sat at her station listening to every panicked Tharn transmission. Her team had spent 3 months breaking the Tharn encryption. Now they heard everything. Commands, arguments, fear. They're trying to organize a breakout, she reported to Admiral Jiwan. Northeast vector. 20 ships are being assigned to punch through. Jiwan nodded to Captain Sunwoo, her tactical officer. Position destroyers to block them. No firing unless they fire first. The human ships moved with perfect coordination. The Tharn breakout group found their escape route suddenly filled with human vessels. Weapons locked and ready. This is impossible, Vexthor roared. How do they know what we're planning before we even execute? His second officer looked at him with dawning horror. Sir, what if they've been reading our communications? All of them? Vexthor felt his blood turn cold. No, that would mean they knew about this ambush from the beginning, his officer finished. That would mean we weren't setting a trap. We were walking into one. The Tharn commander collapsed into his seat. How long had they been watching? Days, weeks, months? Every strategy session, every tactical discussion, every confident boast about crushing the humans. Had they heard it all? Lieutenant Hyunwoo Bae sat in his fighter, ready to launch if the order came. Around him, 300 other pilots waited. They had trained for this moment for years. Not the battle itself, the waiting. The discipline to hold fire even when every instinct screamed to attack. Fighter wing! Admiral Jiwan's voice came through their helmets. Stand ready, but do not launch. We want them to surrender, not to die. Yes, ma'am, Hyunwoo replied, but his hands gripped the controls tightly. If the Tharn fired, if they killed even one human, he would show them what human fighters could do. 45 minutes passed in tense silence. On the Tharn flagship, Vexthor sat frozen. His officers argued around him. Some demanded they fight. Better to die with honor than surrender to prey animals. Others insisted they had to survive. The fleet was the collective's greatest military asset. Throwing it away on pride would doom their entire civilization. Sir, we must decide, his second officer urged. The human deadline approaches. Vexthor looked at his tactical display. Everywhere he looked, human ships waited. They didn't move aggressively. They didn't taunt or threaten. They just waited with the patience of predators who knew their prey had nowhere to run. He opened a communication to his fleet admirals. "I need a vote. Fight or surrender." The channel exploded with arguments. Some admirals screamed for battle. Others pleaded for reason. The discord was deafening. Then a junior officer's voice cut through the chaos. "Sirs, the humans are launching medical ships. Every Tharn commander checked their sensors." It was true. 3 human vessels marked with medical symbols were moving slowly into the Tharn formation. They broadcast no hostile intent. They simply drifted closer, their bays open and ready. A communication came through. Dr. Jamin Ryu appeared on their screens wearing medical uniform. "This is Captain Jamin of the medical ship Mercy's Hand," he said in careful Tharn. "Your 3 destroyed ships had escape pods. We detected life signs. We're here to collect survivors. Please do not fire on medical vessels." Vexthor stared in confusion. They destroyed 3 ships and now wanted to save the survivors? What kind of enemy does that? "It's a trick," one admiral insisted. "They want us to lower our guard." But Vexthor watched as the human medical ships reached the debris fields. He watched as they carefully extracted Tharn escape pods. He watched as their sensors showed the pods being brought aboard, the survivors being treated. "They're saving our people," his second officer whispered. "After we tried to ambush them, they're saving our wounded." Something broke inside Vexthor. Not his spirit, his certainty. He had been so sure humans were prey, weak, naive, easy to defeat. But prey didn't surround hunters without being detected for 19 days. Prey didn't crack military encryption. Prey didn't show mercy to enemies. What are they? He asked quietly. His second officer had no answer. Admiral Jiwan watched the medical operation proceed. "How many survivors, Captain Jamin?" 47 so far, Admiral. They're badly injured but stable." "Good. Take care of them." She looked at the countdown. 15 minutes remained. On her tactical display, something changed. 1 Tharn ship powered down its weapons. Then another. Then 10 more. "Admiral," Commander Taeyang reported, "we're detecting a split in the Tharn fleet. About 40% are powering down. The rest are holding position." Jiwan nodded slowly. "The reasonable ones versus the proud ones. Let's see which side wins," she was about to find out. The Tharn fleet was tearing itself apart from within, and Admiral Jiwan watched it happen on her tactical display. Blue icons represented ships that had powered down their weapons. Red icons showed ships still combat-ready. The colors mixed and swirled as commanders made their choices. 52% have surrendered, Commander Taeyang reported. "The rest are still deciding," Jiwan nodded. "Time until deadline." 8 minutes. On the Tharn flagship, chaos ruled. Vexthor stood on his bridge, listening to his admirals screaming at each other over the communication channels. The fleet was splitting in 2, those who chose survival and those who chose honor. "You cowards," Admiral Krethfor shouted over the channel. "You would surrender to prey? To animals who barely know how to build ships? These animals surrounded us without us knowing." Another admiral fired back. "They're reading our every communication. What honor is there in dying stupidly?" Vexthor tried to restore order, but his voice was lost in the argument. He had lost control. The humans had done more than surround his fleet. They had broken it. His second officer touched his arm gently. "Commander, we must choose. For ourselves." Vexthor looked at his loyal officer. They had served together for 20 years. He had 4 children waiting at home. Vexthor himself had a mate and 2 young offspring who called him father. "What would you do?" Vexthor asked quietly. His second officer met his eyes. "I would live to see my children again. There is no shame in surviving impossible odds." Captain Minho watched from the silent arrow as the Tharn fleet fractured. His ship still floated in their midst, completely undetected even now. 3 weeks of silence, and they still didn't know he existed. "Some of those ships are moving into aggressive formations," so men warned. "They're forming up around the flagship." Minho sent the update to Admiral Jiwan. She acknowledged immediately. Aboard the Indomitable, Lieutenant Hyunwoo sat in his fighter cockpit. The launch bay was open now, ready for immediate deployment. His squadron could be in space in 30 seconds if needed. "All wings, this is Wing Leader Hyunwoo," he said calmly over the squadron channel. "We may be launching soon. Remember your training. Controlled fire only. We disable, not destroy. These are defeated enemies, not targets." 200 voices acknowledged the order. Captain Narration walked through her carrier's corridors, checking on her crew. Some were young, barely past training. Others were veterans who had seen combat before. All of them looked nervous. "Captain," a young ensign asked, "are we really going to fight 300 ships?" Nari smiled confidently. "We're already fighting them, and we're already winning. The question is whether they're smart enough to realize it." 5 minutes to deadline. On the Tharn flagship, Admiral Krethvor sent a final message to Vexthor. "Commander, I am taking my battle group and breaking through the human line. We will punch a hole for the rest of the fleet to follow. Fight with us or shame yourself forever." 40 Tharn warships began moving together, forming a spearhead aimed at the thinnest part of the human encirclement. Their weapons charged. Their engines burned hot. "Admiral," Commander Taeyang alerted Jiwon. 40 ships are attempting a breakout. North-northwest vector. Jiwon didn't hesitate. "Captain Sunwoo, prepare the railgun platforms. Target their engines only. Disable, don't destroy." "Targeting engines," Sunwoo confirmed. "Solution locked." Engineer Haeun Park monitored the stealth systems across the fleet. 19 days of operation, and they were starting to show strain. Heat was building up. Power fluctuations were increasing. She sent a message to the Admiral. Stealth could hold for another hour, maybe 2, before they had to shut down and vent heat. Jiwon acknowledged the report. 1 more hour. That would have to be enough. 3 minutes to deadline. Vexthor made his decision. He stood up from his command chair and addressed his bridge crew. "Power down all weapons. Send surrender signal to the human fleet." His bridge fell silent. Some officers looked relieved. Others looked away in shame. "Sir," his weapons officer protested. "You can't." "I can and I will," Vexthor interrupted. "I will not waste thousands of lives on pride. Send the signal." But before the communication officer could obey, alarms screamed across the bridge. Admiral Krethvor's battle group had launched their attack. 40 ships accelerated toward the human line, weapons firing. The human response was instant and precise. 20 railgun platforms fired simultaneously, not at hulls, not at crew compartments, at engines. The tungsten rods punched through Tharn propulsion systems like paper. Explosions bloomed across the breakout group as reactors went into emergency shutdown. 40 ships. 20 shots. 10 seconds, none destroyed, all disabled. Dead in space, drifting helplessly. The Tharn fleet fell completely silent. "Impossible," someone whispered on an open channel. "That accuracy, that coordination." Admiral Jiwon's face appeared on every Tharn screen again. Her expression was calm, but her voice carried steel underneath. "I said power down or be destroyed. I kept my word. Those ships are disabled but intact. Their crews are alive. But the deadline has passed. Fleet Commander Vexthor, I need your answer now." Vexthor took a shaking breath. "Human Admiral, the Tharn Collective Fleet surrenders. We will power down all weapons and await your instructions." One by one, the remaining 260 Tharn ships went dark. Weapons powered down. Shields collapsed. Engines cut to minimal levels. The greatest ambush in Tharn military history had become the greatest surrender. Dr. Yunahan listened to the Tharn communications as the reality sank in across their fleet. She heard shock, disbelief, fear, but also, in some voices, relief. Many had expected to die today. They were glad to be proven wrong. "Admiral," she reported to Jiwon, "the Tharn are requesting medical assistance for the disabled ships. Several reactors are unstable." "Captain Jamin," Jiwon immediately ordered, "take your medical ships to those vessels. Stabilize their reactors. Save whoever you can." Jamin acknowledged, and his 3 medical ships moved toward the crippled Tharn vessels. Human engineers worked side by side with Tharn technicians to prevent reactor breaches. Human medics treated Tharn wounded without hesitation. On his bridge, Vexthor watched in stunned silence as humans saved his people. Again, the enemy that had every reason to let them die instead worked frantically to keep them alive. "I don't understand," he said quietly to his second officer. "We tried to slaughter them. Why are they saving us?" His officer had no answer. Commander Jiho Kang assembled his marine boarding teams. Admiral Jiwon had ordered them to prepare to secure the Tharn flagship. Not with violence, with presence. Show the Tharn that the humans were in control now. "Remember," Jiho briefed his teams, "these are defeated enemies, not criminals. Treat them with respect. We're here to ensure compliance, not to humiliate." 200 Marines checked their gear in silence. They would board with weapons, but those weapons would stay lowered unless absolutely necessary. Captain Minho finally received permission to decloak the silent arrow. After 3 weeks of perfect silence, his ship powered up and became visible to Tharn sensors for the first time. The reaction was immediate. Vexthor stared at his scanner display in horror as a human stealth ship appeared right in the middle of his formation. It had been there the whole time, watching, recording, reporting everything. They knew, Vexthor whispered. They knew every detail, every plan, every word. He looked at his second officer with haunted eyes. We never had a chance. From the moment we decided to ambush them, we had already lost. The silent arrow slowly maneuvered out of the Tharn formation, its mission complete. Captain Minho allowed himself to finally relax. 3 weeks without rest, without noise, without detection. 3 weeks that had won a battle without firing a single shot from his ship. Well done. Admiral Jiwan's voice came through his communication. Come home, Captain. You've earned it. Minho smiled tiredly. On our way, Admiral. As the silent arrow departed, it passed by the Tharn flagship. Vexthor watched it go, the small black ship that had sealed his fate. It was no bigger than a shuttle, 5 crew members at most, yet it had defeated his entire fleet just by watching and waiting. What are humans? He asked again, but this time he knew the answer. They were patient. They were smart. They learned their enemies better than their enemies knew themselves. And perhaps most frightening of all, they showed mercy when they could have shown cruelty. The Tharn Collective had sent its greatest fleet to crush humanity. Instead, they had learned that humans were not prey at all. They were something far more dangerous. Survivors who had spent thousands of generations learning to hunt creatures stronger, faster and more powerful than themselves, and now, in the age of stars, those skills translated into something the galaxy had never seen before. Admiral Jiwan looked at the tactical display showing 260 surrendered ships. No human casualties, minimal Tharn casualties, a perfect operation, but she felt no satisfaction. Only sadness that it had been necessary. All ships stand down from battle stations, she ordered. Maintain security positions but lower alert status. Commander Taiyang, contact the Tharn homeworld. Tell them their fleet is safe but under human control. Tell them we need to talk about peace. The surrender was complete. Now came the harder part, turning enemies into something else. Hopefully friends. The Tharn homeworld received the news in stunned silence. Their greatest fleet, 300 ships, their best commanders, their most powerful weapons had surrendered without destroying a single human vessel. The government convened emergency sessions. Military leaders demanded explanations. Citizens gathered in public spaces, watching the news broadcasts in disbelief. High Chancellor Vornath stood before the collective council, his forearms trembling with barely controlled rage. How? How did 300 warships lose to 90 human vessels? The military advisor who brought the news looked broken. They were waiting for us, Chancellor. They knew about the ambush before we even positioned our ships. They surrounded our fleet and waited 19 days for us to spring our own trap. 19 days? Vornath repeated in disbelief. Our sensors detected nothing for 19 days. They have stealth technology we didn't know existed. Encryption breaking we didn't think possible. Intelligence gathering that makes our security look like children playing games. Aboard the human flagship, Admiral Jiwan prepared for the most important conversation of her career. She sat in her ready room, reviewing everything Dr. Yunahan's team had learned about Tharn culture, politics, and psychology. They value honor above almost everything, Yuna explained, sitting across from the Admiral. But their concept of honor is different from ours. For them, direct combat is honorable. Deception is shameful. We broke every rule they understand about warfare. Will they keep their word to surrender? Jiwan asked. I believe so. To break a surrender would be even more shameful than surrendering in the first place. But they'll struggle with it. We need to give them a way to accept defeat without losing face completely. Commander Minji. Oh, the fleet's diplomatic officer entered the room. She had been preparing for this moment since the operation began. Admiral, the Tharn High Chancellor wants to speak with you directly. He's demanding to know our terms, Jiwan nodded. Put him through. The screen activated, showing Chancellor Vornath in his council chamber. Behind him, dozens of Tharn officials watched with hostile expressions. The Chancellor's forearms were crossed in what Yuna had explained was a gesture of defensive anger. "Human Admiral," Vornith said, his voice cold. "You have defeated our fleet through deception and cowardice. State your terms so we may know the price of our commander's shame." Jiwan kept her expression neutral, though she felt the sting of the insult. "Chancellor, with respect, there was no deception. We defended ourselves against an unprovoked ambush. Your fleet attempted to destroy a convoy of medical supplies. We simply knew about your plans and prepared accordingly. You spied on us. You broke into our communications." "Yes," Jiwan admitted calmly. "We did. Because 3 months ago, we intercepted messages discussing attacks on human civilian targets. We could either wait to be slaughtered or take steps to protect ourselves. We chose protection." Vornith had no immediate response. Behind him, some officials whispered to each other. Jiwan continued. "As for terms, your fleet will remain under our supervision while we negotiate. Your ships will be returned undamaged. Your crews will be treated well. We have already begun medical care for your wounded." "We want peace, Chancellor, not conquest." "Peace?" Vornith laughed bitterly. "You surround our ships with overwhelming force and call it peace." "We surrounded your ships to avoid killing thousands of your people," Jiwan replied firmly. "If we wanted conquest, your fleet would be debris. Instead, every ship is intact and every crew member is alive." The Chancellor fell silent, processing this. On the Tharn flagship, Vexthor sat in what used to be his command chair. Human Marines stood at key positions throughout the bridge, but they kept their weapons lowered. Commander Jiho Kang stood near the command station, respectful but alert. "Your Admiral is speaking with our Chancellor." Vexthor said to Jiho, "Yes, sir. She's very good at diplomacy." "She's very good at everything, it seems." Vexthor gestured at the human Marines. "Your soldiers are disciplined." "They haven't mistreated my crew." Jiho nodded. "We were ordered to treat you with respect. You're defeated enemies, not prisoners to be abused." "Why?" Vexthor asked genuinely. "We tried to kill you. We planned to destroy your convoy, murder your civilians. Why show mercy?" Jiho considered the question carefully. "Because we remember what it's like to be at war with ourselves. Humans fought each other for thousands of years. We learned that enemies today might be allies tomorrow. Cruelty creates endless cycles of revenge. Mercy creates the possibility of peace." Dr. Yuna Han was conducting interviews with captured Tharn officers, trying to understand their perspective. One young officer, barely past training age, sat across from her in the interview room. "Why did you attack us?" Yuna asked gently in the Tharn language. The officer looked uncomfortable. "We were told humans were dangerous, that you were expanding too quickly, that you would threaten the collective if we didn't stop you now." "And what do you think now?" The officer was quiet for a long moment. "I think we were told lies, or at least not the whole truth. You could have destroyed our fleet. Instead, you disabled some ships and saved the crews. That's not what dangerous enemies do." In the human fleet's medical bay, Dr. Jamin Ryu worked alongside Tharn medical personnel to treat the wounded from the disabled ships. Language was a barrier, but medicine was universal. They found ways to communicate through gestures and shared screens showing anatomy. A Tharn doctor approached Jamin hesitantly. "Why are you helping us?" "We are your enemies." Jamin looked up from the patient he was treating. "You were our enemies. Now you're wounded people who need help. That's all that matters in this room." The Tharn doctor stared at him in confusion, then slowly nodded and returned to work. Lieutenant Daeun Shin, the damage control officer aboard Admiral Jiwan's flagship, was coordinating repair assistance to damaged Tharn vessels. Human engineers were working in teams with Tharn technicians to fix systems disabled by the railgun strikes. "Their technology is less advanced than ours," one human engineer reported, "but it's solid, well designed. We can work with this." A Tharn engineer nearby heard the comment through a translator. "You compliment our designs while holding us prisoner?" The human engineer shrugged. "Good engineering is good engineering, regardless of politics. Besides, you're not prisoners. You're people whose ships need fixing, and we have the tools to help." Back in the diplomatic call, Chancellor Vornith was struggling with the reality of the situation. "What guarantee do we have that you won't simply destroy our fleet once we agree to your terms?" Admiral Jiwan leaned forward. "Chancellor, please think carefully. We've had your fleet completely surrounded for 19 days. We've had clear shots at every vessel for over 2 weeks. If we wanted to destroy you, we would have done so already. We went to enormous effort to avoid killing your people. Then what do you want? An end to hostilities. Open communication. A guarantee that the Tharn Collective will not attack human civilian or military targets. In return, we'll return your fleet, share some of our intelligence technology so this doesn't happen again, and establish trade relations. Vornith looked shocked. You would share technology with us? After this? We'd rather have you as partners than enemies. Partners don't ambush each other. Commander Taiyang was reviewing the intelligence gathered over the past 3 months. The data was staggering. They had recordings of every Tharn military communication, fleet movement, strategic planning session. It was a complete intelligence victory. Should we share all of this with them? Captain Sunwoo asked, looking at the data. Taiyang shook his head. No. We share enough to prove we could have prevented this ambush. We keep the rest secure. Trust but verify, as the old saying goes. On the carrier Indomitable, Lieutenant Hyunwoo finally powered down his fighter. His squadron had spent hours at ready status, prepared to launch but never needed. He was grateful for that. Another day without combat, his wingman said. I'm starting to think we trained all these years for nothing. Hyunwoo smiled. The best battles are the ones we win without fighting. Remember that. Engineer Haeun Park was exhausted. The stealth systems had performed beyond expectations, but maintaining them for 19 days had pushed every system to its limit. Now, with the battle over, she supervised the careful shutdown and heat venting procedures. You did it, her assistant said admiringly. 3 weeks of invisibility. That's going to change naval warfare forever. Haeun nodded tiredly. If it prevents more bloodshed, then it was worth every sleepless night. Captain Minho finally docked the Silent Arrow with the fleet. As he stepped off his ship, Admiral Jaiwan was waiting personally to greet him. 3 weeks in enemy territory, complete silence, perfect execution, she said, shaking his hand. The entire operation depended on your intelligence. Well done, Captain. Minho smiled wearily. Glad it's over, Admiral. My crew needs real food and actual sleep. They've earned it. Take a week of leave. You've all earned it. As Minho walked away, Ji-won turned back to the diplomatic call. Chancellor Vornith was conferring with his advisors. Finally, he returned his attention to the screen. Admiral Park, the Collective Council will need time to discuss your terms. But I want you to understand something. You have humiliated us. You have shown the entire galaxy that the Tharn Collective can be defeated through. Admiral Ji-won stood at the observation window of her flagship, looking out at the Tharn fleet. 260 ships hung in space like captured stars, dark and quiet. Around them, human vessels maintained careful watch. 3 days had passed since the surrender. 3 days of tense waiting for the Tharn Council's response. Behind her, the bridge crew worked efficiently. They had maintained battle-ready status the entire time, though everyone hoped it wouldn't be necessary. Lieutenant Somin Lee approached with a datapad. Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the Tharn homeworld. It's Chancellor Vornith. Ji-won took a deep breath. Put it through. All senior officers to the bridge. Within minutes, Commander Taeyang, Captain Sunwoo, Commander Minji, and Dr. Yuna Han assembled. The main screen activated, showing the Tharn Chancellor. He looked tired, older somehow than 3 days ago. Admiral Park, Vornith began without preamble. The Council has debated your terms. The arguments have been intense. I understand, Chancellor. This is not an easy situation for anyone. No, it is not. Vornith gestured to someone off-screen. I am not alone in this conversation. Fleet Commander Vexthor requested to speak with you directly. Vexthor appeared on the screen beside the Chancellor. The Tharn commander looked humbled but composed. He met Ji-won's eyes steadily. Admiral Park, I have spent 3 days reviewing what happened. I have read the reports, studied the timelines, spoken with my officers and crew. He paused, choosing his words carefully. I was wrong about humans. Completely wrong. Ji-won remained silent, letting him continue. We believed you were prey because you were young in the stars. We believed you were weak because you avoided direct confrontation. We believed you were simple because you valued individual life over glory. Vexthor's forearms spread in a gesture Yuna had taught them meant acknowledgement. We understood nothing about you. And now? Ji-won asked quietly. Now I understand that you are persistence hunters, just as you told me. You don't strike quickly. You plan carefully. You watch patiently. You learn everything about your prey, your enemy, before you act. And when you do act, the battle is already won. Chancellor Vornith took over. The Council has voted to accept your terms, Admiral. All of them. We will cease hostilities. We will establish communication protocols. We will negotiate trade agreements. And in return, you will return our fleet intact. Jiwan felt relief wash over her, but she kept her expression neutral. Thank you, Chancellor. I believe this is the beginning of something better than war. Perhaps. Vornath didn't sound entirely convinced. But I have a question. You said you would share some of your intelligence technology with us. Why? Wouldn't keeping that advantage serve you better? It was a fair question, and Jiwan had known it would come. Because, Chancellor, the galaxy is large and full of unknowns. Humans and Tharn combined are stronger than either alone. We want allies, not subjugated enemies. Allies require trust, and trust requires honesty about capabilities. Vexthor leaned forward. There is something I must know. The small ship that watched us for 3 weeks. The silent arrow. Could we have detected it at all? Captain Minho, who had been called to the bridge for this moment, stepped forward. With your current technology? No, Commander. Our stealth systems operate on principles you haven't discovered yet. But that's one of the things we'll share. Not the full technology, but the principles, so you can develop your own version. Why would you share that? Vexthor asked, genuinely confused. Because the next time we need to hide in your space, we'll ask permission first, Minho replied with a slight smile. Allies don't spy on allies. The following day, preparations began to return the Tharn fleet to their control. Human Marines withdrew from the Tharn ships. Human engineers finished their repair work. Human medical teams transferred the last of the wounded back to Tharn medical vessels. Commander Jiho Kang met with Vexthor one final time on the Tharn flagship's bridge. The Tharn commander looked around at his bridge, now returned to his control. Your Marines were professional, Vexthor said. They treated my crew well. They're good people, Jiho replied. As are yours. We all have families waiting at home. Everyone's grateful this ended without more bloodshed. Vexthor nodded slowly. Admiral Park asked me what humans are. I have thought about this question constantly. I believe I have an answer now. What's that? You are what happens when a prey species evolves intelligence instead of armor or claws or venom. You survived by being smarter, more adaptable, more patient than everything that hunted you. And now in the stars, those traits make you more dangerous than any predator species could be. Jiho considered that. Maybe. Or maybe they make us better at turning enemies into friends. Dr. Yunahan conducted one final meeting with Tharn communication specialists. They sat in a conference room sharing data on language, culture, and communication protocols. Your language is beautiful, one Tharn linguist said. So many subtle variations in tone and context. Yuna smiled. Yours is equally complex. It took our computers 3 months to fully crack your encryption. That's very impressive. But you did crack it. Yes, because we needed to. But we'd rather spend that time learning to communicate openly instead of secretly. Yuna pushed a data chip across the table. This contains everything we learned about your language and culture. Use it to understand us better. The Tharn linguist looked at the chip in wonder. This represents months of work. You're just giving it to us? Knowledge grows when it's shared. That's a human saying. Maybe it can become a Tharn saying too. In the human fleet's recreation area, Lieutenant Hyunwoo sat with his squadron, relaxing finally. They had stood ready for days, prepared to launch into combat at any moment. That moment never came. I almost feel disappointed, one pilot admitted. All that training and we never fired a shot. That's the best kind of mission, Hyunwoo replied. Our job is to protect humanity. If we can do that without killing anyone, that's a victory worth celebrating. Another pilot raised a glass. To winning battles we never had to fight. The squadron drank to that. Engineer Haeun Park sat in her workshop, already working on improvements to the stealth systems. Admiral Jiwan had visited personally to thank her. Your stealth fields changed everything, the Admiral had said. They gave us the advantage we needed to end this without massive casualties. Now, alone with her designs, Haeun thought about the responsibility of such technology. It could save lives or end them. The choice would always depend on the people who used it. She made a note in her files. Priority: develop counter-stealth technology. Share principles with Tharn within 6 months. Maintain trust through mutual capability. On the bridge, Admiral Jiwan prepared to make one final call to Chancellor Vornath. The Tharn fleet would be departing soon, returning to their space. This would be the last official communication before the diplomatic phase began. Vornath appeared on screen, looking less hostile than before. Not friendly yet, but open to possibility. Admiral, our fleet is preparing to depart. Before we go, I wanted you to know that this experience has changed how the collective views humanity. For better or worse, Jiwan asked, both truthfully. We fear your capabilities, but we respect them. And respect is the foundation of peace, yes? It is, Chancellor. I hope our people can build something lasting on that foundation. As do I. Borneth paused, then added, there is an old Tharn saying, the hunter who never becomes prey learns nothing about survival. We were hunters who became prey. We learned much, Jiwan smiled. We have a similar saying. Walk a mile in another's shoes before judging their path. Perhaps our peoples are not so different after all. As the Tharn fleet powered up and began its journey home, Vexthor stood on his bridge one last time, looking at the human ships that surrounded them no longer with weapons ready, but with a respectful distance. What are you thinking, Commander? His second officer asked. I am thinking that we are fortunate. We tried to ambush them. We could have succeeded if they were unprepared. Instead, they were prepared and they showed us mercy. We attacked prey and discovered hunters, but these hunters chose not to kill when they could have. What does that mean for us? It means we have been given a rare gift, a second chance. Let us not waste it. The silent arrow led the human fleet home, its mission complete. Captain Minho sat in his command chair, finally able to relax. 3 weeks of silence had been the longest 3 weeks of his life, but it had been worth it. Behind him, Soman Lee was already writing the after-action report. Captain, how should I describe the mission objective? Minho thought for a moment. Put this. Mission objective was to gather intelligence to prevent war. Mission success, war prevented. 0 friendly casualties. Enemy fleet intact and treaty secured. That's all? Sometimes the most important victories are the ones that never required a battle. Admiral Jiwan called her senior staff together for a final briefing. They gathered in the conference room, tired but satisfied. I want to thank all of you, Jiwan began. This operation required perfect coordination across 19 days of tension. Everyone performed beyond expectations. But more importantly, everyone remembered why we were here. To protect humanity, not to destroy our enemies. What happens now? Commander Minji asked, now comes the harder part. Building peace is always harder than winning battles.